Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to a very special edition of the movie review series. And today I'm going to be talking about the brand new DCU movie Superman, which is the first one to be released from DC Studios, and it's directed by none other than James Gunn, who we all know directed the MCU trilogy, Guardians of the Galaxy, and I've just been to see Superman at the cinema, and I can honestly tell you that this movie was really good. I really enjoyed this one a lot. This was a lot of fun, and it actually turned out to be, as far as I'm concerned, probably one of the best Superman movies I've seen in quite a while. And that's saying a lot because, you know, Superman, as far as his run on the big screen is concerned, has been very up and down, at times hit and miss. And I feel someone as iconic as Superman should have had a lot more movies on the big screen, but unfortunately, that hasn't always been the case. And I feel at times that, as far as movies are concerned, they don't seem to quite get Superman right. They seem to get Superman right more on TV, as we've seen in the past with Superman and Lois, which for me is one of the absolute best DC shows I have ever seen in quite a while. So when they announced that we were going to be getting a brand new Superman movie under the DCU umbrella, and James Gunn was going to be directing it, my initial reaction was, do we really need another Superman movie? Because unless it's something I want to see that's completely different, it's just going to be more or less same sort of his origin story, Lex Luthor as the bad guy, as the main villain, that sort of thing. It's not going to be anything we haven't seen before. And not since the Christopher Reeve movies, you know, it seems like at times they've not been able to recapture the magic and majesty of those classic movies of the late 70s to the early 80s. The less said about Superman 3 and 4, the better, especially 4. But, watching this movie, James Gunn really went the whole hog with this one. He wasn't afraid to fully embrace the golden and silver age of the Superman comics, in terms of the over the top wackiness and approach. He really went the whole hog, and it really came out very well. And there were a lot of surprises in this movie, some surprise cameos, some things we had never seen before in a Superman movie. I loved it. It was absolutely amazing. Now, when they announced that David Corsenswet was going to be cast in the role of Clark Kent slash Superman, I'm not going to hold it. I don't really know much about him. He's kind of an unknown-ish actor to me, which I think works out very well. And seeing him as Superman in his hopeful, heroic, and optimistic glory, he turned out to be a much better Superman than I expected. I was people who would say, "Oh, he doesn't look like Henry Cavill." No, of course he doesn't look like Henry Cavill. Far from it. Henry Cavill is Henry Cavill. But I thought David Corenswet did a really good job capturing the iconic majesty of Superman and the all-round quintessential good guy. I liked that, and I loved what we got in this movie. We got a lot of hope. We got lots of optimism, a lot of heroicness. Everything you wanted to see in a Superman movie and more. There was no darkness or broodingness. This was a Superman who really sees the good in everyone and wants to do the right thing no matter what, even if it might rub some people up the wrong way. He's a hero who doesn't really want to sit bad stuff happen. He's always trying to figure out ways to do the right thing. he can do the right thing and help out in any way he can. And I think James Gunn, as a director, really understood the Superman character. He really went to the character's roots and the core of who he is. And Superman, from what we got in this movie, he is the world's greatest hero. He is a role model and someone that everyone can look up to and respect and love. And Superman really came across in this movie as a beloved heroic figure. And I think what James Gunn did, as I mentioned earlier, he really wasn't afraid of embracing the whole comic book aspects of Superman. And it really came across very well. And David Corsenswet really carried the mantle and majesty of Superman very well. And I thought he was an excellent Superman. As far as Clark Kent is concerned, we didn't really see him as Clark Kent that much. We got to see him as Superman more, but the scenes that we did see with him as Clark Kent, he came across as a very good Clark Kent, but I thought he was a much better Superman. So maybe as time goes on, we'll see David Corenswet develop and flesh out his Clark Kent persona more as time goes on. But I thought he was very good as Superman. He looked like a young Superman, and I think that came across in this movie. Now, let's talk about the rest of the cast. So, Rachel Roseanne Hannon is cast as Lois Lane, and her Lois Lane had a lot of personality, a lot of spunk to her, a lot of fire to her. And I feel that's something I have been missing with Lois Lane in the movies. You know, apart from Margot Kidder, who is the iconic Lois Lane, I feel with the last couple of actresses we've had in Superman movies, Lois Lane has come across as a bit dull. You know, Superman Returns, Kate Bosworth, she was quite a dull and bland Lois Lane, didn't really have much to her. Amy Adams, a fine actress, but her Lois, it was okay, but nothing to go mad about. Elizabeth Tulloch in Superman and Lois, although a TV show, she was awesome as Lois Lane. So Rachel Brosnahan did an amazing job as Lois, and she really showed a lot of personality. And I thought her and David Corenswet had amazing chemistry as Lois and Clark. You know, at times their chemistry kind of reminded me a little bit of some of what I've seen in the comic books. There was a little bit of the animated series in there, so it was all there. I thought those two did a great job as Lois and Clark. Now, Nicholas Hoult, a guy I know very well. I've followed him since his days on Skins when he was very young. When he was cast as Lex Luthor, my first response was, oh, not another movie with Lex Luthor. But then when they announced Nicholas Hoult was going to play him, I knew straight away that this guy was going to do an excellent job. He is a phenomenal actor, and he really felt like an evil villain, someone who just can't stand Superman and hates what he stands for, and that really came across really well. Michael Rosenbaum, for me, he is the true definitive Lex Luthor. But Nicholas Hoult, to his credit, he was amazing and a huge improvement from Jesse Eisenberg. The less said about his Lex Luthor, the better. And his performance in this movie, he really shined very well. And at times, he almost stole the show from David Corenswet. He really came across as an evil villain, and he was just going to any lengths to discredit and make Superman look bad, and he didn't care how, as long as he did it. I just thought he was fantastic as Lex Luthor. And if this is going to be the start of a brand new DC cinematic universe, I want to see more of his Lex Luthor. He really came across as a real piece of crap, as Lex Luthor should be. And Lex Luthor I've never really liked much. He's never been my favourite Superman villain. But Nicholas Hoult, once again, the awesome actor that he is, he did an amazing job. I loved his performance, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. So, for those of you who probably may have not seen the movie yet, this movie is going to contain, as we go along here, I will be discussing major plot points which contain major spoilers. So, I'm just giving everyone an early heads up, a pre warning, so to speak, just in case there are some out there who probably may have not seen this yet. So, one of the things I liked about this movie was they didn't go into Superman's origin story, because we know Superman's origin. He came to planet Earth as a baby after Jor-El and Lara sent him away before Krypton was destroyed, and we know how he got his powers. And as legendary as that origin story is, yeah, we've kind of seen it a million times. It's been done to death, so we don't need to see that addressed again. And I'm so glad they didn't do that, because I'm fed up of it. And it's a legendary story, but we don't need to see it every time. So, from my understanding, Clark has been Superman for 3 years, so he's fully established as a hero, and he works at the Daily Planet, and Lois Lane knows that he is Superman. So we've kind of got all of that already established, and I think that's a good thing, because as great as the origin story is, as I said, it's kind of been done to death. Now, Lex Luthor is on a mission to try discredit and frame Superman in any way he can see fit, as long as he's out of the way. And his two main comrades are the engineer, who is part of a team called the Authority, and his muscle is Ultraman. Now, Ultraman, for those out there who are long-time comic book geeks like myself, Ultraman in the comics was an evil doppelganger of Superman, who was leader of a rogue version of the Justice League called the Crime Syndicate. We didn't get that version of Ultraman in this movie, but what we did get was he was kind of like a hybrid between Ultraman and Bizarro. And throughout most of this movie, Ultraman's identity was more or less kept a secret. He never talked, he was just standing there, and his uniform was very reminiscent of Doomsday when he first came to Earth, that dark green camouflage gear with the red goggles. But there was a twist to it. Ultraman's uniform had the U sprayed on it. So there was always a lot of suspicion about who is under the mask, who is Ultraman. Obviously, it wouldn't be the Ultraman we know, who was leader of the crime syndicate. And as we go along through this movie, we do eventually learn who really is under the mask, which I'll get to in a moment. But those were his two main comrades, the engineer and Ultraman. And Lex Luthor breaks into the Fortress of Solitude, and he finds the message that Jor-El and Lara sent to him before their planet was destroyed. And with the help of the engineer, Lex Luthor learns that Jor-El and Lara sent their son to rule Earth with an iron fist. Pretty heavy stuff, and Lex Luthor more or less broadcasts this message worldwide, resulting in everyone turning against Superman. So it's the old classic bad guy framing the good guy and everyone turning against him. It's been done before, but I thought this worked really well. And we've got another surprise in this movie. We saw it in the trailer, but Crypto, the Superdog. He had quite a big part in this one, and Superdog was a character who'd been in the comics for years and years. He's been in some media, but we've never really got to see Crypto in a Superman movie, and he played a big part in this film. And it was really sweet, to have Superdog helping Superman save the day and coming to his rescue. It's a bit of an excitable dog, but I liked it. I thought Crypto was definitely one of the highlights of this movie. And we also got some appearances from DC heroes like Guy Gardner, one of the Green Lanterns, Mr. Terrific, who had a big part in this film, and Hawkgirl. So they're known as the Justice Gang. So obviously, this is going to be the start of building up the Justice League, which we all know Superman will be the ones who form the team and lead them into battle against the world's greatest villains. And I thought these guys, they came across as a bit of comic relief, so to speak, but I thought they were funny. I thought they were one of the highlights. And Guy Gardner, holy cow, I never thought we'd ever see Guy Gardner in a DC movie. So that was a lot of fun to see him. And I'm glad Jimmy Olsen, who was played brilliantly by Skylar Gisondo, I'm happy that he got to play a big role in a Superman movie because we all know that Jimmy Olsen is the iconic best friend of Superman, hence the name Superman's pal. And Jimmy Olsen, if you look at the history of the character in Superman movies, he's not really had a big part in any of them. He's had very little interaction with Superman. Apart from Superman 1 and Superman 3, Jimmy Olsen has more or less been in the background. He's not really done a whole lot, which is a shame, really, because Jimmy Olsen, he's been there from the very beginning. And to not have him in a big role in a Superman movie is just bizarre, no pun intended. So I'm glad they changed that. I'm glad we got to see the classic Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen dynamic, and we got to see that iconic dynamic between Lois, Clark, and Jimmy. Even though we only got a little bit of it, but just the fact we got those three interacting with each other made me really happy. And hopefully, going forward in a sequel, we'll get to see that dynamic fleshed out more, and we'll get to see them have more scenes together. So I'm really glad that Jimmy Olsen got to have his time to shine in a Superman movie. Now, we also got another appearance from another DC character, Metamorpho. Now, Metamorpho has had a very interesting history in the comic books. He was the evil doppelganger of Plastic Man. Then he went on to become a bit of an anti hero, and he was more or less like an evil Plastic Man. But the version that they went for, Metamorpho, is he was able to create different elements in his body so he can turn himself into rock, crystal, ice, kryptonite, which he used against Superman when they were being held in Lex Luthor's Pocket universe. So I'm really glad that Metamorpho is finally in live action and he had a nice little part. So I'm really glad about that. Now, another surprise we got here, which really made me laugh, was as the whole world is turning against Superman and distrusting him, we got a cameo from John Cena as Peacemaker. I couldn't believe it. Peacemaker on a chat show slagging off Superman. Loved it. Took me by surprise, but I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I know there were rumors that we were going to get a surprise, but I never thought it would be him. I just never thought we would see Peacemaker in a Superman movie. Can't wait to see another surprise like that. Love it. Rick Flag was in this movie as well, who we all know is part of the Suicide Squad. So he got a little appearance here as well. And we also got a surprise appearance from Supergirl as well, who was played by Millie Alcock. So obviously this is going to be a setup for Supergirl's movie, which we know is coming. So that was a nice surprise as well. The fight scenes between Superman and Ultraman, who revealed himself to be a clone of Superman, who was also played by David Corsenswet, but he just had longer hair. That was fantastic as well. This whole movie, from start to finish, was fantastic. You know, Superman fighting fire breathing dragons, which is something in the comic books we saw. Maxwell Lord appearance. This film had it all, and I loved it. This was so much fun, and this film really wasn't afraid of embracing the comic books. I really thought James Gunn did a good job with this one, and this really felt like a bright, colourful, warm, and hopeful movie. Yes, there was some little dark bits, but it wasn't dark and depressing like some of the DCEU stuff. This was not afraid to take itself too seriously. And as I said, it was a lot of fun. Crypto, Supergirl, various DC heroes, great stuff. Loved it. The storyline itself, yeah, it was maybe a little bit rehash of what we've seen in the past, but I thought it worked very well here. I thought it worked out very well, and I think for a first Superman movie for this cinematic universe that James Gunn is putting together, I think we're off to an amazing start. I really do. And after watching this movie, I'm hoping for a sequel, which I have heard is on the cards. I'm asking for one thing: give us Brainiac as the main villain. Please. If there was ever a time to do it, it's now, more than ever. And Eve Tessmacher, who was played by Sarah Sampaio, yeah, she was just a blonde bimbo, but she ended up coming through for Jimmy. You know, she was kind of a little bit clingy and obsessed with him, but she was fun. She was absolute fun. And yeah, as I said, that word I use a lot for this movie. This was absolute fun from start to finish, and I loved it. And another thing that I was really pleased about with this movie was I'm glad that they kept the Kents alive because in most Superman media, Jonathan Kent has always died of a heart attack, and Martha Kent eventually dies of old age. So the decision to keep the Kents alive, which was something that they did back in Superman the animated series in the 1990s, was a really good move because I've always liked the idea of Superman going back to Smallville where he can be himself, talk to his adoptive parents about the problems he faces every day. I like that because it just has that nice, warm family feeling where Clark can go back and be with his family and just relax and be himself. So I'm glad that they kept the Kents alive and they played a nice role in this movie, you know, being there for Clark and giving him that support that he really needs at times of crisis. So I like that. And we got to see the Superman robots, who were a big part of the comic books. So it's nice to see the robots in the Fortress of Solitude. I would have liked to have seen the giant key outside the fortress. I think that would have been really cool, but I still like what we got. The soundtrack was excellent. They kept the iconic John Williams Superman theme, but they just throwed in little bits of Hans Zimmer's flight theme from Man of Steel, and they came up with their own unique theme. So when you hear it, you know it's Superman. It embraces the old, but also embraces the new future going forward. So soundtrack was great. Everything about this movie was great. I really enjoyed this one because originally going in, I had my reservations. I was still going to go and see this movie, but I thought to myself, do we really need another Superman movie? Especially if it's going to be the same sort of thing we've seen before. But after watching this, I'm really glad I went to see it, and this turned out to be much better than I thought. And I'm glad that we actually got a Superman movie that feels like Superman. I love Man of Steel. Man of Steel had its little issues, but I still thought Man of Steel was pretty decent. But I think this movie is a real step in the right direction and has got me really excited for the future in terms of where James Gunn is going to take Superman in the sequel. Hopefully, we'll get Brainiac, but we'll see. So, As far as my overall rating is concerned, I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. This was excellent. I won't give it 10 out of 10 simply because the story was kind of a rehash of what we've seen already. That's my only issue with it. And, Ultraman, I would have liked to have seen the proper Ultraman from the Crime Syndicate. We may still see that one day, but I do think that Ultraman was more or less just there as someone for Superman to fight. So he wasn't really the main villain because he had no line. But yeah, I'm giving this movie a 9 out of 10. This was a lot of fun. This was a great DC movie and probably one of the best Superman movies I've seen in quite a while. There was lots of surprises, maybe a tad bit too overcrowded with DC characters. I get what James Gunn's trying to do. He's trying to get his universe up and running and established, but I would have maybe liked to have seen just a little bit more focus on Superman. But when we did get it, it delivered. So that's all I've got to say, really. But this was definitely worthy of a 9 out of 10. If we had taken all the other DC characters away and just kept it to Superman, maybe I could have snuck in a 10 out of 10, just maybe. But this was still a great film and worthy of 9 out of 10. This was excellent, and I'm looking forward to seeing what James Gunn has up his sleeve next. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What did you guys think of Superman? Did you enjoy it? What did you think of David Corsenswet as Superman? Do you think he did a great job? Do you think he really carried the mantle of Superman very well? What did you think of Nicholas Holt's performance as Lex Luthor? Do you think he was very good? What do you think we'll see in the sequel for Superman? And also, what was your thoughts on Crypto finally making his live action appearance? Do you think it was good? Do you think you'd like to see Crypto in the sequel? And where do you think James Gunn is going to go with Superman next, as far as the DCU is concerned? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the movie review series. So until then, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.